One man walked into Harley-Davidson with a bold plan and left behind a legacy no one saw coming. The bikes changed, the brand shifted, and something deeper started to crack. Was it vision or sabotage? You're about to see how a single leader did what rivals couldn't: break Harley from the inside. The outsider who took control. He wasn't born on a bike, never spent nights wrenching in a cold garage, yet he became the man who took over Harley-Davidson. Jochen Zeitz's rise to the helm of one of America's most iconic motorcycle brands left many in shock. To hardcore Harley enthusiasts, it felt like a betrayal, a man who knew branding but not biking. The board, however, saw him as a visionary, a savior who could drag Harley into the future. Jochen Zeitz wasn't just any executive, his resume boasted one of the most remarkable corporate turnarounds of the 21st century. As CEO of Puma, he took a brand on the brink of irrelevance and transformed it into a global lifestyle phenomenon. He wasn't a biker, but he was a strategist, a man who could see where trends were going before they got there. When Harley's board decided it was time for a drastic change, Zeitz was at the top of their list. For years, Harley had struggled to attract new riders. Younger generations weren't buying into the rugged, rebellious image that once defined the brand. To the board, Zeitz seemed like the perfect fit. He had revived Puma through a mix of sleek marketing and strategic product lines. Harley needed that kind of transformation, or so they thought. The decision wasn't just calculated, it was desperate. But for the community, the move felt entirely wrong. To them, Harley-Davidson wasn't just a brand, it was a way of life. Riders didn't just buy bikes, they bought into a tradition of freedom, grit, and rebellion. Handing control to someone who had ridden across the country just once, a carefully planned PR stunt, felt like giving a prized motorcycle to someone who couldn't appreciate its worth. The issue wasn't just Zeitz's lack of motorcycle culture, it was his vision. He didn't see Harley as a community, he saw it as a brand to be repackaged and sold differently. In his mind, modernizing meant rebranding, and rebranding meant shifting away from the blue-collar roots that built the company. This fundamental disconnect would shape his entire tenure. Harley's core audience felt the brand slipping away. To them, Zeitz was an outsider who saw motorcycles not as machines to be ridden, but as symbols to be marketed. And while the leadership saw Zeitz as a visionary, the community saw something far different, and they weren't wrong. Rebranding the Rebel, from biker icon to lifestyle brand. What happens when the rough edges are sanded down and the Rebel brand goes corporate? Harley-Davidson found out the hard way when Jochen Zeitz began implementing his vision. He didn't just want to modernize the bikes, he wanted to transform Harley into a lifestyle brand, one that appealed to urban, affluent buyers rather than its traditional, rugged, working-class base. Zeitz had a clear strategy: replicate his success at Puma. At Puma, he had taken a struggling athletic brand and transformed it into a global lifestyle phenomenon. To him, Harley could do the same, shift from the dusty back roads to sleek city streets. Advertisements became polished, featuring trendy urbanites rather than long-haired bikers tearing down country roads. The new Harley wasn't about grit and rebellion anymore. It was about fashion and status. This wasn't just a marketing change, it was a cultural overhaul. Harley-Davidson had long represented more than just motorcycles. It was the embodiment of freedom, rebellion, and a distinctly American way of life. The idea of packaging it as a luxury lifestyle brand felt like betrayal to many longtime fans. The loud, throaty roar of a Harley engine was being drowned out by sleek visuals and sanitized messaging. For Harley enthusiasts, the shift wasn't just uncomfortable, it was alienating. They had always seen their bikes as symbols of independence, not luxury. The idea of appealing to affluent professionals rather than rugged riders struck at the heart of what made Harley-Davidson unique. The disconnect grew wider with each new campaign. Loyal customers felt ignored, pushed aside for a demographic that didn't understand the brand's heritage. It wasn't just that Harley was changing, it was that it was changing into something that didn't feel like Harley at all. In trying to rebrand the Rebel, Zeitz misunderstood the core appeal of Harley-Davidson. Riders didn't want to see their bikes treated like high-end fashion accessories. They wanted authenticity, tradition, and a connection to the brand's storied past. Instead, they got marketing jargon and glossy aesthetics. But while the brand was changing on the surface, something deeper was about to break: the soul of Harley itself. Rewire. They called it Rewire, a strategy to modernize Harley-Davidson and make it financially leaner. But what it actually did was cut the company off from its roots. In the eyes of corporate strategists, the plan made sense: reduce costs, streamline production, and focus on profitability. But in practice, it shattered the essence of what Harley represented. The first step of Rewire was drastic cost cutting. Jochen Zeitz believed that Harley had become too bloated with unprofitable models and inefficient production lines. His solution? Trim the product lineup and focus on high-margin, large displacement bikes. The most shocking cuts came with the discontinuation of entry-level models like the Street 500 and Street 750, bikes that had been gateways for young riders into the Harley world, but eliminating these models had consequences. By cutting affordable options, Harley effectively shut the door on younger buyers. The brand that had once been accessible to working-class rebels was becoming an exclusive club for those who could afford to spend big. This wasn't just a strategic blunder, it was a cultural catastrophe. The layoffs that followed added insult to injury. Entire departments were dissolved and longtime employees were given severance packages rather than farewells. The dealerships that remained were left struggling with reduced inventory and dwindling foot traffic. Harley, once the heartbeat of small towns and local garages, was now a polished corporate machine that seemed to care more about margins than riders. Rewire didn't just streamline production, it streamlined Harley's identity. The community that had fueled the brand's success was left feeling abandoned. Riders saw their favorite models vanish, and their local dealerships struggle to stay open. It wasn't just that Harley was losing money, it was losing itself. And while Harley aimed for the luxury market, the real-world consequences hit harder than anyone expected. We dug deep into Harley's history, interviewed riders, and analyzed market data to understand how one leader's vision reshaped a legendary brand. If you value our research, hit that like button and subscribe for more videos. The dealership exodus. When the bikers stopped coming. Harley-Davidson dealerships once stood as more than just places to buy motorcycles, they were community hubs. Riders gathered not just to shop, but to swap stories, attend events, and feel part of a larger brotherhood. Showrooms buzzed with life as bikers planned weekend rides, talked customization, and shared road tales. Yet today, many of those same dealerships are ghost towns, empty spaces where the roar of engines has faded into silence. So, what went wrong? The problem began when Harley-Davidson's leadership decided to reorient the brand toward a luxury market. This shift led to a line of expensive, high-end motorcycles, great for wealthy urbanites, but out of reach for the average rider. Dealerships, especially those in small towns and rural areas, struggled to sell these new models. Longtime customers who had grown up on Harleys found themselves priced out, and new, younger bikers had no affordable entry points. The result was predictable. Dealerships saw fewer visitors, and sales took a nosedive. Dealers started voicing their frustrations. They had supported the brand through thick and thin, stocking parts, organizing events, and investing in the community. Now they were left with showrooms full of expensive bikes that nobody wanted to buy. One dealership owner lamented, "We used to be packed every weekend. Now I'm lucky if 3 people walk in." It wasn't just about bikes, it was about belonging. And when the bikes stopped being affordable, the sense of community evaporated. Community events were the first to suffer. In the past, dealerships hosted bike nights, charity rides, and weekend gatherings that brought locals together. But as the bikes got more expensive and the customer base shrank, those events dwindled. Without new riders to keep the spirit alive, the gatherings that once symbolized Harley camaraderie became memories. Financial strain quickly followed. Dealerships that had thrived selling affordable, iconic models now found themselves with stagnant inventory. The bikes that once flew off the floor, like the Street 500 and Street 750, were gone, replaced by models costing over $20,000. For rural dealerships, the difference was devastating. High costs, low sales, and dwindling community engagement pushed many dealerships to the brink of closure. Economically, the disparity was clear. Harley's new strategy might have worked in affluent urban centers, but it was a death sentence for dealerships in working-class areas. Urban luxury buyers weren't coming to small-town dealerships, and rural riders couldn't afford the new lineup. As one frustrated dealer put it, "They forgot who built this brand, the guys who saved up every penny to buy their first bike." As the dealerships emptied out, the real numbers began to reveal the damage. Harley's strategy had not just hurt sales, it had fractured the very community that had sustained it for generations. The stock crash. How Wall Street caught on. When the bike stopped selling, Wall Street stopped buying. For years, Harley-Davidson stock had been a reliable bet, a brand synonymous with loyalty, rugged appeal, and consistent sales. But as the dealership exodus took hold and the bikes gathered dust, investors began to take notice. The numbers didn't lie. Harley-Davidson was in trouble. The stock began its slide after multiple quarters of missed targets. Harley's leadership kept assuring investors that the brand's new direction, focused on high-end models and electric bikes, would eventually pay off. But Wall Street wasn't convinced. Analysts started downgrading the stock, citing declining unit sales and shrinking market share. The once proud brand that had dominated the cruiser market was now losing ground, not just to luxury competitors, but to brands that had stuck to affordable, reliable motorcycles. Investor skepticism grew as each quarterly report painted a grimmer picture. Revenue was down, dealership closures were up, and the company's attempts to pivot to electric models were falling flat. The Rewire, touted as Harley's electric future, was priced too high to gain traction. Investors saw through the corporate optimism. Harley wasn't evolving, it was losing its identity. Economic indicators made the reality stark. Dealer closures continued, and the few remaining locations reported declining foot traffic. Sales of legacy models, which had once propped up revenue, now struggled to find buyers. The attempt to capture the luxury market had alienated the traditional customer base without successfully pulling in the affluent demographic. Harley's leadership had failed to read the market signals, mistaking the desire for modernization as a desire for luxury. They overlooked a fundamental truth. Riders didn't just want a flashy logo, they wanted a bike that felt like an extension of themselves. While brands like BMW successfully marketed premium models by retaining their core identity, Harley had tried to reinvent itself entirely and failed. The stock continued to tumble, reflecting not just a financial loss, but a loss of confidence in Harley's future. Investors realized that Harley wasn't just facing a temporary downturn, it was confronting a crisis of identity. But it wasn't just the stock falling, the new generation found new brands to call their own. Indian Motorcycle, the rival that stayed true. As Harley-Davidson struggled to redefine itself, another iconic American brand remained steadfast. Indian Motorcycle, Harley's long-standing rival, saw the turbulence not as a warning but as an opportunity. As Harley strayed from its roots, Indian doubled down on its heritage, reinforcing its reputation as a brand that never lost sight of what made motorcycles great. While Harley was caught up in corporate rebranding and luxurious reinventions, Indian focused on consistency. The brand maintained its rugged, heritage-driven image, resisting the urge to modernize in ways that alienated its core audience. For Indian, it wasn't about chasing the latest trend, but about honoring a legacy that had been crafted over decades. This approach resonated deeply with riders who felt disillusioned by Harley's new corporate identity. One of Indian's smartest moves was sticking with models that balanced affordability with iconic style. Bikes like the Scout and the Chief became staples for riders who wanted a classic American motorcycle without breaking the bank. Unlike Harley, which was increasingly pushing high-priced luxury models, Indian offered mid-sized, reasonably priced motorcycles that didn't compromise on quality or character. Moreover, Indian's engagement with the biking community remained strong. They sponsored rallies, attended motorcycle festivals, and maintained a direct line of communication with their riders. Indian knew that its audience valued tradition and a sense of belonging, so they never let go of the cultural connections that had long defined the brand. Indian's commitment to traditional values while embracing modern advancements proved to be the winning formula. They didn't reject innovation, they just ensured that any changes made enhanced rather than replaced their core identity. Even when introducing new technologies or modern features, Indian motorcycles still looked, sounded, and felt like Indian motorcycles. In stark contrast to Harley's luxury pivot, Indian's steady strategy highlighted the importance of preserving heritage while cautiously integrating modern elements. The company proved that staying true to your brand's essence doesn't mean you can't evolve. It just means evolution should respect tradition. While Harley lost its footing, Indian solidified its place in the American motorcycle landscape. But Indian wasn't the only brand seizing the moment. Another iconic rival found its stride: Triumph's cultural comeback, balancing heritage and innovation. While Harley-Davidson struggled with its identity crisis, Triumph took a very different approach, And it paid off. Instead of chasing new demographics at the cost of alienating their core audience, Triumph embraced its heritage while carefully updating its models for modern riders. Triumph managed to walk the line between tradition and innovation, proving that legacy brands could evolve without losing their soul. The secret to Triumph's success lay in maintaining its iconic designs while upgrading performance. Models like the Bonneville, Speedmaster, and Bobber remained unmistakably Triumph. Classic aesthetics, chrome accents, and the unmistakable sound that longtime fans adored. Yet beneath the retro look, these bikes featured updated technology, improved fuel efficiency, and modern safety features. Triumph also excelled at community engagement. Rather than distancing itself from its roots, the brand leaned into its storied history. Custom builds, vintage-themed events, and partnerships with bike shows kept Triumph at the heart of motorcycle culture. The brand didn't just market motorcycles, it celebrated them. Crucially, Triumph remained accessible to younger riders. While Harley was pricing out new customers, Triumph offered affordable models that stayed true to the brand's spirit. This strategy allowed Triumph to capture a diverse audience without losing its core. The appeal wasn't just the machine, it was the sense of belonging to a community that valued both history and innovation. Triumph's commitment to balancing the old and the new contrasted sharply with Harley's luxury pivot. Where Harley seemed to be selling nostalgia as a premium commodity, Triumph presented it as an inherent part of their identity. Riders felt that buying a Triumph meant joining a legacy, not just owning a product. In a world where brands often sacrifice authenticity for trendiness, Triumph showed that honoring your past doesn't mean resisting progress. Harley's mistake was treating its legacy as an obstacle to overcome rather than a strength to embrace. And as these heritage brands found their footing, a more unexpected competitor made a bold move. BMW's R18. Reinventing the cruiser for the modern biker. BMW's entry into the cruiser market wasn't just a bold move, it was a statement. The R18 was BMW's answer to Harley's dominance, and it hit the market with a balance of tradition and innovation that immediately caught riders' attention. While Harley was pivoting towards luxury branding, BMW saw an opportunity to introduce a cruiser that respected the genre while adding German engineering precision. The R18's design was a masterclass in blending heritage with modern appeal. Its massive 18,000 cubic centimeter boxer engine paid homage to BMW's iconic flat twin engines of the past, while the minimalist design emphasized craftsmanship and quality. Unlike Harley's recent offerings, which seemed to be chasing a corporate ideal, the R18 felt genuine, a cruiser designed for the open road, not just the showroom. One of BMW's smartest moves was positioning the R18 just below Harley's premium models. This made it an attractive alternative for riders who wanted a reliable, powerful cruiser without the steep price tag associated with Harley's newer luxury offerings. It was a bike that made sense, a high-performance machine that didn't sacrifice heritage for innovation. Riders appreciated the R18's performance too. While Harley's electric ventures left some enthusiasts skeptical, the R18 delivered raw power and reliability, traits that cruiser fans valued. Additionally, BMW's global reputation for quality added to the bike's appeal. In markets where Harley struggled to maintain its identity, the R18 became a reliable alternative. BMW's calculated approach stood in sharp contrast to Harley's erratic strategy. Where Harley seemed caught between preserving its past and pushing forward, BMW confidently presented the R18 as both a tribute and an upgrade. The message was clear. Tradition doesn't have to be a liability if executed with respect and precision. By sticking to its roots while embracing modern engineering, BMW captured the interest of bikers who felt Harley had left them behind. But as these brands rose, Harley's own leadership was about to face its toughest internal challenge: the resignation that exposed the truth. Jacob Dardeville's stand. When Harley-Davidson board member Jacob Dardeville resigned, his departure sent shockwaves through the company. It wasn't just a resignation, it was an indictment. In his letter, Dardeville didn't mince words. He criticized the leadership's obsession with corporate restructuring at the expense of community engagement and accused them of fundamentally misunderstanding the brand's essence. The letter detailed how Harley had lost its way, focusing on market strategies that ignored the brand's core identity. Dardeville described a company culture that felt increasingly detached from the community that had built it. Employees felt demoralized, dealerships struggled, struggled, and loyal customers felt abandoned. The letter painted a bleak picture of a brand being hollowed out from within. Riders who read the letter weren't surprised. They had been saying the same things for years. The difference was that now, someone from the inside was admitting it. Social media lit up with discussions about Dardeville's resignation, and motorcycle forums buzzed with support for his candidness. Harley could no longer dismiss the growing discontent as mere noise. It was now public and undeniable. The fallout from Dardeville's departure was immediate. Other employees, emboldened by his honesty, began voicing similar concerns. Internal reports surfaced highlighting low morale and a widening disconnect between corporate strategy and community expectations. What had been whispered complaints became an open rebellion. Media outlets picked up the story, questioning Harley's direction and leadership. Investors grew uneasy as the public perception of Harley's downfall became harder to ignore. Dardeville's letter wasn't just a resignation, it was a wake-up call. The board's response was muted, reflecting a lack of awareness of just how deeply rooted the issues had become. The leadership seemed oblivious to the growing dissatisfaction both inside and outside the company. With the brand's internal conflict now public, Harley faced a critical question. Could it find a way to recover before it was too late? Reinventing the future. Modern bikes without losing heritage. Can Harley embrace electric without losing its roar? As the motorcycle industry moves towards sustainability, Harley cannot afford to ignore electric vehicles. However, the challenge lies in retaining the brand's iconic identity while innovating. Harley's first major attempt, the Rewire, missed the mark. It wasn't just the high price that alienated customers, it was the loss of that signature Harley feel. To succeed with electric bikes, Harley must find a way to maintain the distinctive sound and raw presence that define the brand. Electric models don't have to be silent, they need to roar. Engineers must find ways to integrate unique sound profiles into electric engines to keep the visceral experience alive. Riders don't just want performance, they want personality. One promising concept is the cultural hybrid, blending classic cruiser aesthetics with modern electric performance. Instead of sleek, futuristic designs, electric Harleys should look like traditional cruisers. This approach allows modern technology to coexist with the brand's iconic design language, satisfying both traditionalists and newcomers. The Rewire project offered valuable lessons. Launching an electric bike as a separate brand diluted Harley's identity. Instead, future electric models should proudly wear the Harley badge, signaling that sustainability and heritage can coexist. Additionally, pricing must be realistic. The target demographic still wants affordability, even when investing in new technology. Competitors like Triumph and BMW have successfully introduced modern features without losing their legacy appeal. Triumph's modern classics maintain vintage aesthetics while incorporating state-of-the-art technology. BMW's R18 Cruiser combines heritage styling with advanced engineering. Harley should study these examples and integrate new tech without abandoning tradition. Balancing innovation and legacy is not just an engineering challenge, it's a cultural one. Harley must assure riders that they are not abandoning the past, but evolving to meet the future while preserving the essence of the brand. As Harley prepares for the future, it's not just technology they need to master, it's identity. Lessons from the fall, how Harley can reclaim its legacy. Harley's crisis isn't just about bikes, it's about remembering who they are. The brand's downfall wasn't solely due to poor product choices, but a deeper identity crisis. Reclaiming its legacy means understanding the core values that made Harley great in the first place. The first step is to learn from past mistakes. The push towards luxury alienated the core demographic, and chasing affluent buyers at the cost of traditional riders proved disastrous. Harley must recommit to being a brand for the working class, rebels, and everyday adventurers. This means crafting bikes that are affordable, durable, and connected to the brand's storied past. Leadership needs to change too. Future executives should come from within the biking community or at least deeply understand it. Bringing in leaders who live and breathe motorcycle culture will ensure that decisions align with rider expectations rather than corporate trends. A rebranding with purpose is essential. The company must shift from confusing messaging to a clear commitment commitment to freedom, rebellion, and individuality. Marketing should reflect real riders, those who fix their own bikes, hit the road on weekends, and see Harley as more than just a name. Ultimately, Harley must reestablish itself as a community-driven brand. Listening to rider feedback and building bikes that reflect their desires will restore trust. The brand should be less about lifestyle branding and more about genuine connection. Harley's journey ahead won't be easy, but if the brand can remember what made it great, the ride is far from over. Thanks for riding with us through the story of how one leader's vision changed Harley-Davidson forever. If you found this breakdown insightful, hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into motorcycle legends and industry shifts. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.